Thanks everyone for tuning into Sims Workshop. I hope we're all having a wonderful day. So, today we're going to be reviewing The Poisons We Drink by Bethany Baptiste. This was an arc sent to me quite some time ago, so better late than ever. Apologies to the publisher for the delay. First I want to start by saying that this book was very hard for me to get into. But before I talk about why, I want to talk about the things I did like. So first and foremost, what I did enjoy a lot was how it tackles systemic racism. I once had this teacher, you've heard me say this before, who would say genre fiction is not real fiction. And this book is a perfect example of why genre fiction, she was old, she was white, Pamela Painter's her name. This book is a perfect example of how genre fiction, because it is a young adult sci-fi fantasy book, can tackle real world issues in such an interesting way. It does tackle systemic racism and corruption in the government. Instead of, yes, your characters here are all part of minorities, every single one. You've got queer coded characters, and they're all people of color as well, right? And I enjoyed that a lot. So yes, while they all are part of communities that are, and do feel the brunt of the unfairness half the time, or more than half the time, they are also called witchers in the book. So the author is really using this witcher concept, and no, not Geralt witchers, they're completely different. The only similarities is name only, which I think is really cool. So the government is against anyone who is a witcher. So they are facing a lot of their rights being taken away. They are facing systemic racism. And I think it's really interesting when authors do use fantasy to get real world matters across. And that's why you should never discount anything just because it's labeled as romance or young adult or sci-fi fantasy. Just because it is a genre fiction does not make it any less than, I'm personally not a fan of romance or dark romance or any of that stuff, but I don't shame people who are. To each their own. I know a lot of people who are romance readers who don't really like the books that I read, to each their own. But never ever discount another one just because it's not something that you read. She was old, she was white. Pamela Painter was her name. She always used to say genre fiction is not real fiction. I may have written a genre fiction short story for that class just to kind of stick it to her. I got a C+. When I turned in my story, she said, "What did I say about genres? We don't do genre." It was a zombie story. It was for her. So, genre fiction is real fiction because it can get across real world ideas. So it was relatable in that sense. I thought the way it progressed and developed that concept of the story, I think it was very well done. All right. I think it was very well done. You're really getting to see the allegory in the story, with racism and protesting against racism and the unfairness of it all. You really do get to see that in the book. It's relatable, just because it's against people who are witchers doesn't make it any less relatable. Why I struggled with this book is because of the main character. Okay? Venus, to me, was not very likable at all. I get it. The world kind of dealt her a bad hand. She has what is called a deviant. And a deviant, again, this is going to be another allegory. A deviant is a magical personality that awakens after an instance of trauma. So it's kind of like people with multiple personalities. You know how sometimes the second personality will take over to protect the main personality from trauma. And that's exactly how it works here. So I understand she's been through it. It was just like her tone, you know, just the way she treated some of the characters who are supposed to be her friends and her sister especially. It didn't make her likable. She wasn't always a likable character, which made it hard for me to connect to her. And she's our main character, you know, she's our main protagonist. She's the only POV we've got here. So it was really, really a struggle for me to read the book, mainly because of her. I liked the story. I liked the plot. I liked her unraveling the corruption in not just the Witcher community, but how it connects to the government. I liked those aspects of the story. I did like the pacing and the slowly unraveling and tension of it all. I just didn't like Venus 90% of the time. And I hate when that happens, you know. I could have loved the story if I had liked Venus a little bit more. I loved her sister, you know, even though her sister's a teenager and sometimes she acts rashly. So I got her sister, you know. I understood her sister. I was able to relate to her sister. I just think that Venus as a whole, her characterization fell short. You know, she's very stiff. She was very abrupt. I hate the miscommunication trope. You know, she kept secrets from people and I hate that. It's one of my pet peeves when it comes to storytelling. And that was really my biggest hindrance with this book. I do want to say that even though I like the story and I like the pacing, it did at times feel a little long. Like there were some scenes where the tension was like on point and I was like, ooh, but then they really took too long to get to the point. And I'm like, okay, you're losing your momentum here. And I think that mostly just, again, connects to Venus. Because I didn't really like her, you know? I wanted to see the story continue, but without her. Like, just put her to the side. I liked the ending. I liked how she kind of showed everyone up. That was really gratifying to me and rewarding as a reader. But again, for the most part, I just struggled with her characterization, and I found it really hard to connect to her as a character. But overall, though, I think it was a decent story. Solid 3 stars. I just wish her characterization was better. But the story is very interesting. I like how there's also interludes of like the Witcher Wikipedia about the history of Witchers in this realm. That was really cool. You know, it gives a little bit of backstory. It didn't disrupt the pacing of the story. It didn't disrupt the overall plot either. It added something. So I thought that was also really interesting to the story and the narrative. But, you know, I really just couldn't stand Venus. She was a little annoying for like 90% of the book. I don't know. She was just very standoffish to me. I just couldn't connect to her. In any case, thank you all for tuning into this review. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with all your book and friends. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, happy reading.